All right. Here we go. Oh, hey guys, can everybody stop? Because Emma has a question. Yes.
Were we supposed to read anything else other than look at the ancient Romans?
No, we were not.
Dang.
You didn't have very much to do over break because it's break, right? Which is fine.
I would have been fine not doing anything because most of the time I need something to distract my anxiety.
Well, you know what? Sometimes it's nice to have something to do. Can everybody turn to the prayers before study at the end of your reading guide? Thank you. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work. For to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Excellent. Excellent. We are starting the second half of our year today. And so as you figured out, because I had you read out of the book of the ancient Romans, we are starting our discussion of ancient Rome. Almost everything, okay, that's fair enough. Almost everything that we have in the modern world, in the Western world, in Europe and America, we get almost all of it from Greece and Rome. Our literary traditions, our art, our legal systems, our architecture, a lot. And so spending a year on Greece and Rome really tells us where we've come from. And the people who started our country knew all of this. And we're actually going to, especially next week and the week after, we're going to talk about some people in our early history, American history, who were compared often to Romans, particularly Romans, not so much Greek. And we'll find out why. They really loved the Romans more than they loved the Greeks or followed the Greeks. Well, there's legal reasons, but we'll talk about that. So I had you read, and what I want to do is just kind of work through our questions and also work through the reading, because it was a fair amount, not too long. But first of all, let's take a look at some maps. We have been looking at this map all year so far, but now we're not going to look at Greece on this map, we're going to look at Italy on this map, and we're going to remind ourselves, does everybody see Italy? It is named Italy on the map in large letters. Also, it looks like a lady's dress boot, kicking Sicily, like football. Notice, first of all, how very, very close Italy is to Greece on this map. Very close. And you might remember that we talked about in like 800s, 700s BC, a lot of Greeks decided to go out and set up colonies. And a lot of them went over here and up here, but a lot of them went to Italy and Sicily. And so this southern part of the boot and Sicily had lots and lots of Greeks. And of course, eventually they weren't, they still considered themselves Greeks, but they differed a little bit from the Greeks back home. Just kind of like we don't sound like Englishmen when we talk. We have a different accent than they do in England, even though that's where we came from. A couple hundred years later, we lost it. But still, they considered themselves Greeks. But we're going to talk about the other people who were in Italy when they came. There were other people in Italy when they came. Now, here's my big Italy. This one's easier. This one's much easier because it's turned this direction. Italy has a mountain range that runs down the middle. and kind of divides it into two parts, the Apennines. The Apennines. And then it has just enormous mountains up here. We call them the Alps. So if you cross the Alps, you know you have Switzerland, and right? This is the Alps are kind of a barrier. So the thing is, it's difficult to go back and forth. Does that make sense? But it's easier to go this way than it is to go this way. The mountains on this side are just really, really, really steep. So often, you know, people over the years, they trickle down and they just kind of stay. A, because it's Italy and Italy's awesome and they have really good weather and it's beautiful. B, it's really, really kind of harder to go this way. It's not convenient. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you could go by boat from over here. Oh, by
boat through the Alps. Was that impossible?
well, except there's no water. I don't know where.
There was a river. It looks like
Oh, I see. Well, these rivers don't go. You see, these rivers are on the other side of the Alps. Once you get to these rivers, you're already across the mountains. Okay. And Italy divides the Mediterranean into two seas. We have the Adriatic Sea over here. That's the side where Greece is. And the Tyrrhenian Sea. Sometimes they just called it the Upper Sea and the Lower Sea, because this is kind of north and this is kind of south. This is like the Upper Sea, the Lower Sea. Okay, this is Italy. And you read a little bit at the beginning of our chapter about early Italy. It says the peninsula of Italy divides the Mediterranean world into two parts, eastern and western. And then Dorothy Mills says, Greece turned her face to the east and looked out upon lands that had a more ancient civilization. The face of Italy turned to the west. You might not understand what she means unless you're looking at a map. Look at Greece. Look sort of the direction it's turned. Right? The people living in Greece, this is their main body of water, the Aegean Sea. They're headed this way. Constantly they're doing things in this direction. But look at Italy. This huge, long coastline, it faces west. These are people, I've never heard of the Greeks. They're completely different groups of people. So Greece is considered very eastern. Italy is more western. And you see how it really does kind of divide the Mediterranean into two parts. It sticks down. Look, by the way, look how close Italy is to Africa. Do you ever think about that? Africa comes up north. Do you see that city Carthage? Mm-hmm. Does everybody see where right next to Sicily? We're going to talk a lot about Carthage. It's very, very close. Mm-hmm. And it almost, stretches across and divides the Mediterranean into two. Yes, ma'am?
How many days' journey do you think it would be on a boat?
You know what? Just like, I think they would bring people over in a couple of days. 'Cause there's going to be a lot of battles. Carthage was attacking constantly. Carthage is the arch enemy of Rome, just to let you know.
Like the Greeks couldn't really fight because that was their downfall. And then I don't think they had any really other.
Well, I am reading a Greek history right now for my own fun. And it's happening in around the year 400. And the historian is talking about the Carthaginians attacking Sicily, like in 400 BC. And they were Greek people, in Sicily. Okay. So the first question I asked you was, how did exposure to danger affect the character of the developing Roman people? What are the Romans, what are the people in Italy like? Because they're constantly in danger. Disciplined. You had something to add?
I was going to say strict. But
Strict, disciplined? Yes. Tough. Nobody wants to have a hard life, do we? I don't really want a hard life. But it really makes you strong, but we don't want it. You know, we want to be strong, but we don't want the thing you have to do to get strong, which is suffer a little bit. Sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes we do. It says in the book, constantly exposed to danger, from the earliest days they experienced the sternness and seriousness of life. Self-defense forced them to unite, and often their very existence depended on a life of the strictest self-discipline and control. All this made them stern, practical, and capable. Why? Because people groups kept coming across the Alps, filtering in, and not leaving, right? And attacking and saying, you live here, but I want to live here. I'm going to take your stuff. I'm going to live here now. What does it mean to be practical?
Basically, to say no, you can't go off and make something crazy. It does not apply to gratitude.
Okay, so you can't just can't follow wacky ideas. What is, if we say something isn't practical, what do we mean? Or you want to define practical?
It's not realistic.
Mm-hmm. It won't really work. You kind of, if you're a practical person, you want to know what's going to work, right? We could start getting precious stones and grinding them into powder and making our own paint again. And some artists still do. But it's not very practical, is it, for most of us? When you can just buy paint in a jar if you want to paint. It's practical. It's easier. It's useful. And that's also not practical. If something is too expensive, so if a city is debating whether or not they should replace the bridge or fix it, like, well, is it practical? How many people use it? How much is it going to cost? Those are practical things. We didn't see the Greeks asking that a lot, especially when they decided to go to Sicily. If you remember, like, oh, let's go to Sicily. We're going to. That was not practical. And Nicias, that general who said, dudes, you do not want to do this. You are going to have to get twice the ship, like as many ships as you already have, you're going to have that many. You're going to have to take horses. And Nicias was trying to say, that's not very practical. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it anyway. Okay. The Romans, on the other hand, are practical people, right? We want to know what works. We do it because it's efficient. This is what the Romans are known for in history, being a practical people, stern and practical. Yes, they weren't ornate, beautiful. I think Roman architecture is lovely, but it was made to be practical. We will be looking at some Roman architecture.
They made it for the strength, not for the beauty. Like the Greeks would have made this stuff for beauty.
They did care. They didn't make ugly things purposely. But yeah, the utility was very important. Practical was very important. Were you going to say something, Luke?
Not really.
Okay. If it comes back, you just say it. Okay. The chapter Early Peoples of Italy. I asked you, what two groups of people left an abiding mark?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The Greeks and the
Etruscans.
Etruscans?
The Greeks and the Etruscans. Now, she does mention other people, but that's where it says they left an abiding mark on the early civilizations, the Etruscans and the Greeks. Now, we've talked about the Greeks a lot, right? And we know why they left a mark, because a bunch of them moved to southern Italy and Sicily, and they were living there. Have you ever wondered, and I think we talked about this, so even if you didn't wonder, you probably already know the answer. Yes, we're going to know anyway. The Romans basically worship almost all the same gods as the Greeks. Have we noticed this? They just call them different names.
Yeah, we're reading about this after playing.
And so, yeah. And so you might say, well, that's a coincidence. That's quite a coincidence that they just happened to choose all the same. No, it's not a coincidence at all. They just took them They just took them from the Greeks and named them, except Apollo. Apollo gets no code name. Roman code, he's just Apollo. He's always a. How would you feel if everyone else gets another name except you? Like you're the one. Like,
Well, I mean,
really, I'm just going to be Apollo.
He's the guy that's so important that they can't really.
yeah.
That's nice. He likes
Oh,
that.
Well, like, I would have changed my name years ago if anything literally matched with my last name, but
Oh.
it doesn't.
Oh. Well, Apollo didn't get to choose, apparently. The Romans chose for him, and they
I
said,
didn't choose to be named Emma.
you know what?
Whatever.
None of us chose. You know what? We're all going to have to just collectively forgive our parents for whatever they named us. Because, if we like it, great. If you don't like it, that's just the way life goes,
Change your name.
Anyway. But let's talk about these Etruscans. This is a new group we haven't heard of before, and they did get a lot of things from the Etruscans as well. What does Dorothy Mills say about the Etruscans? She says the Etruscans settled in the coast region north of Rome and developed a civilization of their own as early as 1000 BC. That's really, really, really a long time ago. Not very long after the Trojan War would have happened if the Trojan War story that we have, really happened the way we know.
Half was right, not the God part that was going
Yeah.
on.
But we do know, they did, as you recall, they did find the city. There's a city where Troy should be, and it was burned down. Something happened. There's a city there, and somebody came and burned it down. Why?
It's like just
Why, we don't know.
It's like two-step program. Find a city, burn it
Yeah,
down.
find a city, burn it down. Yes.
The reason why the Sirens are coming after me is because I burned down the Trojan city.
You are very old, aren't you? You are aging
He's
really well,
nothing.
Christian.
He's
But
nothing.
I feel like you're probably tired of being in school at this point. So it says something interesting about the Etruscans here. They were specially skilled in the art of augury.
Ooh.
But then, fortunately, she tells you what that means. The art which interpreted signs in nature as outward expressions of the will of the gods. And they believed that special meanings were attached to such phenomena as thunder and lightning and flights of birds. In other words,
Flights of birds?
yes, flights of birds, that's going to come in really big, actually, in the story we're about to read.
Okay.
But augurs are priests who basically cut animals open. They sacrifice the animal, they cut it open, and then they examine its internal organs.
Oh yeah. I've heard
That's
it.
taking that's actually, they're not augurs, they're haruspices, the people who examine internal organs. But so you kill this animal and it's got a deformed liver. And you're like, oh, the omens are bad. You should not fight today. Or I don't know how often this happens, that they have some deformed organ.
Like we have this. I've heard about this in the book I'm reading before. Much cleaner though.
Oh.
They just use stuffed animals.
Oh, who don't have a lot of internal organs, maybe, but maybe the stuffing is laid
Definitely,
just
yeah,
so,
like the stuffing.
that would be much nicer.
Doesn't really help that the guy is also a tyrant.
Oh, no. What were you going to say, Luke?
The Aztecs would look at the llama's lungs and they could tell the future.
So this is,
Freaks.
it's very interesting to me. This is a digression. But the thing that the Aztecs and Maya, the things that happened in the New World that had no connection with the Old World. Apparently this is a thing that lots of people thought. But anyway, augurs look at the weather. They look at bird flights. They look at, is it on the right or the left? How many birds? Which direction are they going? And they claimed that they could read that it was a message from the gods. And what kind of bird was it? Zeus's, and we're going to have to start calling him Jupiter now because he's Roman now. Jupiter's bird was the eagle. So if eagles did something, it was just like a sign directly from Jupiter.
Why did the eagle was somebody else's favorite bird?
I don't know. Maybe the same reason America decided eagles are awesome, because they're pretty awesome.
Because Greeks.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Bren?
The Romans, they did some pretty weird stuff too. You get down to Greeks, they were pretty weird.
Oh, no, they did some pretty weird stuff. Okay, so one thing that the Romans got from the Etruscans was augury. We believe that nature gives us signs about the will of the gods. What else did they get from the Etruscans? It says they were influenced their architecture, painting, and sculpture. And I brought in actually a couple of pictures for you to see.
Finally.
Yay!
We got some.
This is actually a picture of this was in your Dorothy Mills book. This is an Etruscan sarcophagus,
And people.
but it doesn't look very big, and because they just put the ashes in it. Romans didn't bury people; Romans burned people.
Oh, cremation. We also got cremation from them, I guess.
The Greeks did too, though.
Well,
They would put
Greeks
them
were-
on a funeral pyre and light the pyre. And then they would they'd burn it down until there's just bones left, and they would gather the bones and put them somewhere. So ashes and bones are probably what was in this. But this is Etruscan. And first of all, look at these people's faces. I mean, the guy is a little creepy looking. He looks like a satyr. But my point,
Maybe it is.
my point is, does this look very Greek? Like, is this the way the Greeks made people look? All the statues that we looked at, or not really. I mean, they're obviously, you can tell they're people. Another interesting thing about this is the guy and the lady are there together. And in the Romans, it's like, no. The lady doesn't come to the dinner party. Etruscan women were notoriously like strong and independent. The Romans thought, oh, those Etruscan women. We're going to read about a famous Etruscan woman next week for next week's reading. And she was just over the top, no good. For the Etruscans, the women came to the banquets. And what are these people doing? They're actually at dinner, right? They're laying on the little couch. The Etruscans and the Romans took this over. Where's my marker? Would have a table, with food. And then they'd have like 3 couches. And you lay on the couches and take the food off the table. And which couch you got to be on was dictated by like your status. If you're nobility, if you used to be a slave and you were freed or something like that, you'd be on the lowest couch. And so that's what they're doing. They're at dinner, but the weird thing is, oh, those Etruscan women, they come to dinner with the men. Are you kidding me? Yeah. This is dated to 520 BC. This was made before the Persians ever attacked Greece, before the Parthenon was ever built. The Etruscans were making this. That's what was happening in Italy. They also, here's a very weird, and he's missing his arms, which you get
Happens
old,
a
you
lot
start
with
missing your arms. This one's a little, I don't know what to say.
A little deformed.
And a little, not the most attractive. I'll bring it over, I promise. This is the Apollo of Veii, about the same time, about 500 BC. It was from a rooftop of a temple in the city of Veii. And the Etruscans call him Apullu. Apollo, Apullu, that cannot be a coincidence. Yes, Apullu. But he became Apollo when, the Etruscans and the Romans sort of came together. But yeah, this does not look like a Greek statue at all. That's not like the position. He's got like a running thing going.
Apollo.
Yeah, we don't really. Apullu? We don't really know what Apollo looks like. So, and then this is cool.
Oh, yeah.
This is a chimera. A chimera has, like it's got a snake tail and a lion head, and it's got a goat head coming out on the other side, but you can't see it in this. It's the chimera.
You can see the ribs.
I love this. This is very cool. Yeah, the goat head is growing out. You can see the horns on the goat head.
Every single thing.
This is inscribed with an Etruscan word that means gift. And it was an offering for a temple of the gods. And I think it's very cool. It's made of bronze. It's 2.5 feet tall.
What?
That's completely normal.
Yeah.
It's really pretty. It's fancy. So the other things, they were kind of weird, but I like this Etruscan art. But the important thing is, the Greeks would never make something that looked like this. This is crazy. This is crazy. But this is Etruscan.
Snake is fighting the goat horn.
No, I think it's just in front of it. It's just from
And that gets the lion to run.
yeah, and the horns behind.
I might have welded it together so it didn't like
Yeah.
break off.
No, I don't think so. I think it's, the goat head goes way back in the back, farther than you can see. I need to get another view
Mrs.
of
Ferguson,
this
I
picture.
know why it runs. The snake bites the goat's horns and the goat takes the lion and the lion runs.
Perhaps. Did we read about Bellerophon? I don't think he was in the Greek myths book. No, you can look up the myth of Bellerophon, and he killed the chimera. And interestingly, though, the Etruscans have a story about the chimera, about weird animals that have other animal body parts. I don't know what else to say about that.
Cool.
It is very cool. So that's some Etruscan art. We're going to look at another piece of Etruscan art in a minute, but let us move on. So, according to legend, where did the founders of Rome originally come from? Yes, but before that, Troy. Troy. The story of the Trojan War doesn't stop with Greece. The Romans take it, and they claimed that the founder of the Roman people was Aeneas. And like, who's Aeneas? Well, aren't you happy and lucky? I brought my Iliad. I'm not going to read the whole Iliad to you today. Yes.
Aeneas is the son of Aphrodite.
He is. He is. And in this poem by Homer about the Trojan War, there is an episode where Aeneas, who's Trojan, is fighting Achilles. And we all remember Achilles is awesome till he dies. But while he's alive, he's awesome. And it's bad news when you're fighting Achilles, right? Probably going to die. You're probably going to die if you're fighting Achilles. So Aeneas is fighting Achilles. And it says, Achilles' closing would have slashed his life away with a well-honed blade if the god of earthquakes had not marked it quickly and called the gods at once who grouped around him. Now, I tell you, my heart aches for great Aeneas. He'll go down to the house of death this instant, overwhelmed by Achilles, all because he trusted the distant, deadly archer's urgings. Poor fool, as if Apollo would lift a hand to save him now from death, grim death. Aeneas the innocent. Why should Aeneas suffer here for no good reason, embroiled in the quarrels of others not his own? He always gave us gifts to warm our hearts, gifts for the gods who rule the vaulting skies. So come, let us rescue him from death ourselves, for fear the son of Cronus might just tower in rage if Achilles kills this man. He is destined to survive. Yes, so the generation of Dardanus will not perish. Dardanus means the Trojans. Obliterated without an heir, without a trace. Dardanus, dearest to Zeus of all the sons that mortal women brought to birth for father. Now he has come to hate the generation of Priam, and now Aeneas will rule the men of Troy in power, his sons' sons, and the sons born in future years. This little section where the gods say, we can't let Achilles kill Aeneas because Aeneas is destined to survive. Aeneas is going to rule refugees from Troy and raise up a new Troy. Rome. Rome, which is Rome. But what Christian said is true. Aeneas himself does not build Rome. Aeneas comes to Italy, and as a matter of fact, this week we are going to start reading an epic poem, except it's just a retelling of it, about Aeneas. So this book about the Trojan War is called the Iliad, because Ilium was the name of Troy, okay? The poem we're going to read, or read a retelling of, is called the Aeneid, because it's the poem about Aeneas. Iliad about Ilium, Aeneid about Aeneas. And it is the story of how Aeneas ran away from Troy when Troy was burning, because his mom, as you said, was Aphrodite, Venus. We'll call her Venus now. I know, but I'm going to go back and forth. I'll keep forgetting. Venus is his mother, and she helped save him. And he and other refugees from Troy go on a long journey because the gods tell them, you are destined to found a new city. Your people will start a new civilization, and you will rule the world. So, you know what? It's a happy sort of ending for Troy. Not really, because Troy is torched and burned to the ground, and their king and queen are slaughtered. But they're going to survive. Trojans are going to survive. And as a matter of fact, they're going to take over pretty much the world someday. So they lost round one in the Trojan War, right? But eventually, the Trojans are going to go to Italy, and they're going to start a new city. And that city's going to take over and someday take over Greece. Boom, take that, Greece. You burnt down Troy, but we got you back. Took some hundreds of years, but. So that's what we're going to read. This is the poem that tells us about the voyages of Aeneas. And so for next week, I'll just go ahead and give you your assignment for next week while I'm giving you this one. For next week, I want you to read the Aeneid for boys and girls. I'm just going to write Aeneid, chapters 1 through 5. The chapters are very short. There's no real pictures and there's a lot of text, but the chapters are only like a few pages long. It's really not, it's not hard. This is not going to be hard. And I also want you to read in the Dorothy Mills book. I didn't write the chapters down.
4 through 6, maybe?
Yeah, what is here? Let's see if it's in your reading guide.
4 through 5.
4 and 5, is that what it says on the next page?
Yes, pages 26 to
Through 63, okay. Yeah, so those of you some people who are watching on video have said, oh, my chapters don't have the same names. It doesn't matter, we're not skipping anything. You read chapters 1 through 3 for today. You're reading chapters 4 through 5 for next time. But it's long, as you can see from the page numbers that I put there. So that's why there's no writing assignment. It's a lot of reading. I'm asking you just to read a lot for me, and I'm not asking you for anything else this week, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. And I'll send that out in the email. Okay, back to Aeneas. I need to fast forward a little bit in time, okay? I need to get in my time machine just for a moment, and tell you that the Trojan War, you know, if and when it happened, was probably around the year 1200 BC. You don't have to write this down, okay? But the poem about it that we're going to read was written by a guy who died in 19 BC. You see, there's a lot of years in between. The poem that we're going to read, or the retelling of, was written 19 years before Jesus was born. Well, a little before that, but that's when the author died. And I want to tell you a little bit about this author because he's kind of special, the guy who wrote the Aeneid. His name is Virgil. Publius Virgilius Maro. We call him Virgil. And you might say, what's the big deal about Virgil? What's awesome about Virgil? Virgil was an amazing poet. And there was a man who was actually the Roman emperor when Jesus was born, Augustus. If you read in the book of Luke, it says, in the days of Caesar Augustus, and I don't memorize, you know, a decree went out that all the world would be taxed. And so Joseph took Mary and went to Bethlehem. And that's how the Christmas story in Luke begins. It's that Augustus, in the days of Caesar Augustus. It's this guy. And he became emperor, and he said, you know what we need? We need an awesome poem. Rome needs an awesome poem. The Greeks had awesome poems. The Greeks had 2 awesome poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. We have an awesome poem. Hey, Virgil, you're a good poet. Write us an awesome poem. So he hired Virgil to write a poem about the rise of Rome. They already had stories that they were from Troy, and Virgil didn't make that up. That was a story that was already there. But he gave it this form, right, in the Aeneid. And, and he wrote other poetry as well, Virgil did. Interestingly, when he died, Virgil, he wasn't really quite done with the Aeneid. Some parts of it are not perfect, like the meter of the poetry isn't perfect because he's still brushing it up. But here's the thing, guys. When he was dying, he told everybody to burn it when he was dead. Burn the poem. Nobody knows why he wanted them to burn it. There are speculations about this. But Augustus said, not burning. He died and like, don't touch that. That's our poem. I hired him to do that poem. So it's not perfect, because maybe it wasn't done. But he said, well, I'll give you a hint about it. He said some things that are not very nice about Rome. He implied that they can be kind of mean. That you don't get to be the master of the world by being nice, right? You get to be the master of the world by being tough and like getting rid of people when you got to get rid of them. And so some people think that Virgil wasn't very happy, with Rome or with, I don't know. But the way history went is we still have the poem. They didn't burn it. And Virgil, we would still remember Virgil just because he wrote this poem. If that's all we had, we'd still, Virgil's awesome. This was the Roman poem. All school kids learned this poem, in Roman schools. But he also became really, really famous and popular for another reason. When the church started growing, a lot of the church fathers had very good educations, especially in the East. In the West too. St. Augustine was a teacher, right? A teacher of rhetoric, and he studied all the liberal arts. He had a fine education. The church fathers of the East had fine educations, and they knew this poem. They knew a lot of the other works of Virgil too. And Virgil wrote, this is another book of Virgil's poems. He wrote some poems about, like shepherds. It was very popular then. Like, oh, the shepherds are out, and the shepherd girls are dancing, and the shepherds are playing their pipes, and everything's happy, and they're picking flowers and drinking wine. I don't know, in the sunshine. That sort of thing was popular. And so he wrote, they're called the Eclogues and the Georgics. In the fourth Eclogue, he wrote this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want you to listen to the parts I'm going to read and see if you can think why the early church pricked up their ears when they read this. Okay? And remember, he's writing it before 19 BC, because he died in 19 BC. He says, and some of it's kind of complicated, but be patient, okay? Because I'm going to get to parts that you're going to have trouble not recognizing what I'm driving at. Now the last age, by Cumai's Sibyl sung, has come and gone, and the majestic roll of circling centuries begins anew. Justice returns old Saturn's reign, with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. Under thy guidance, whatso tracks remain of our old wickedness, once done away, shall free the earth from never-ceasing fear. He shall receive the life of gods, and see heroes with gods commingling, and himself be seen of them, and with his Father's worth reign o'er a world at peace. For thee, O boy, first shall the earth untilled pour freely forth her childish gifts, and the flocks shall of the monstrous lion have no fear. Assume thy greatness, for the time draws nigh, dear child of gods. great progeny of Jove. Begin to greet thy mother with a smile, O baby boy. 10 months of weariness for thee she bore. O baby boy, begin. For him on whom his parents have not smiled, God's deemed not worthy of their board or bed. What did he just say is going to happen? What's he talking about?
Jesus.
He's some God boy is going to come and be born, and he's going to initiate a reign of peace and plenty. And what in the world? And guys, nobody knows who he's talking about. This is giving me goosebumps just a little bit. Now, there's speculation. Did Virgil know? Probably not. You know, like, do I believe that God came and gave a revelation to Virgil? I think he was probably talking about some young, noble baby that was going to be born. But the point is, prophets have often said things they didn't know they were saying, right? People have said things that they didn't really understand the import of, and that was from God. For example, when the high priest, Jesus' trial, do you remember the guy, Caiaphas, and he said, it's good for one man to die for the sins of the people. He says, we'll get rid of Jesus so the Romans don't come down on us. And so he said, it's good for one person to die for all of us. And the Bible says he spoke the truth, but he didn't know what he was saying, that one person was going to die for all of them. He just meant we got to bump him off because he's bad news. And it'll save the rest of us, save our necks. But he spoke a truth. Virgil spoke a truth. Apparently he didn't know. So the church fathers latched onto this like, oh my gosh, Virgil is awesome. I think maybe Virgil was even almost a Christian. That's what the church fathers said. And he became really, really highly revered because of that fourth eclogue. They said, you know what? I think he knew something, whether he knew it or not. And so later, many, many years, 1,300 years later, a man in the Middle Ages named Dante decided to write a huge poem about a trip through hell and purgatory and heaven. And his guide was Virgil. He chose Virgil to be his guide. But Virgil couldn't be his guide to heaven because Virgil didn't know Jesus. But he's his guide through hell and purgatory. And then he gets a new guide in heaven. But anyway, Virgil, this is kind of amazing stuff. And so if you read medieval, literature, they're all about Virgil. Like Virgil's their number one. So you can imagine that the Aeneid, like in the Middle Ages, if you're going to study Latin, it's the Aeneid. It's always the Aeneid and the Vulgate Bible. Because Virgil apparently knew something he didn't know. Yeah, go ahead, Luke, first. The Eclogues.
Okay.
You mean for that quote's from?
No,
that I read?
Purgatory.
Oh, it's called the Divine Comedy.
Yeah, Gabriel read that.
Yes, we read that last year. The high schoolers read that last year. And Virgil was the guide. Yes, Brent.
Do you think that he did that all from the past prophecy?
See, I don't know. I don't know. For most Romans of that time, Judea, Israel, was just a backwater province, not very important. And they would have considered their literature kind of low class. We can't prove he didn't. But the twist there is that even the Jews did not completely understand. I mean, they knew there was some sort of Messiah coming, but they didn't understand exactly what he was going to do. Of course, Virgil didn't say, and he is going to die for the sins of the people and be a sacrifice. He just said, oh, there's going to be a boy with the life of the gods in him who's going to bring peace. Well, the Jews thought the same thing. They didn't know he was going to be actually God. They didn't expect him to die. But it's a good question. Do you know, Bryn, remember Plato, who wrote about Socrates? He wrote well, remember what Socrates said. Plato wrote some things that are pretty doggone close to the truth. And some people have thought, and Plato was known to have traveled around a lot. We know he went to Sicily and was there for a while and studied there. He was working with the king in Syracuse. Some people think he went to Israel and read the Old Testament, and he got some of his ideas from them. We don't know. History is full of mysteries like that. We don't know where ideas come from. But anyway, that is the deal with Virgil and the Aeneid. He became super popular because of that, what they thought was a prophecy. Okay, so, however, Aeneas came, and we're not going to talk a lot about Aeneas's story because you're about to read Aeneas's story in a book, so I want to ruin the story for you. Also, we don't need to tell it twice. But after Aeneas settled in Italy, after many, many generations, several hundred years passed, and they built this city. They were living with the people in Italy, and they hadn't built Alba Longa yet. There was a king named, I always get the wrong one. Okay, all right. There was a king named Numitor. And his brother Amulius stole his throne on Amulius. And Numitor had a daughter, Rhea Silvia. And Numitor said, we're going to lock her up, and we're going to make her a Vestal virgin. Vesta was sort of the Roman for Hestia, the goddess of the hearth. And the Romans had a group of servants for her that it was a little bit like nuns. They were never allowed to marry. They were kind of cloistered, not completely 100%, but okay. I'm going to make her one of them. So she can't have any children, and nobody can take the throne away from me. Great. Well, he puts her away. Well, she gets pregnant, which was a no-no. And she said, here's the deal. Like, there was a vision came to me, and the father of my baby is Mars, the god of war, Ares.
Whew.
And Numitor is like, whatever, but they're not living. Your baby's not living. Well, she had 2 babies. She had twins, Romulus and Remus. And Numitor said, this is bad news because they're going to grow up and want to get rid of me and put their grandpa back on the throne. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to throw them out. Because, in the ancient world, if we don't want a baby, we throw it out. But what always happens to those babies?
They get picked.
Oh, somebody always picks them up. And they never learn. Throw the baby out. Somebody's going to. Well, so the story is that he consulted a trustworthy, somebody he thought was trustworthy, some soldiers. He said, go dump these babies. Go dump them near the river, the Tiber River. Dump them. And so they did, and they felt kind of bad about it, but they dumped them. The thing is, the river had recently flooded, and it was going down again. We live by a river, so we're familiar with this, and it leaves garbage behind and mud and sticks and stuff, and it goes down. Well, they just put him close, like, I don't want to go close to that raging, flooded river. Oh, just lay him there. The water will just take him. But the water was going down, right? So they left him there, but the water just kept going down, and it never took him. They were just laying on the ground, bawling, probably. Well, along comes a wolf and feeds them. I know. Instead of eating them, nurses the babies. But you know what? They're hungry. It's all right. It's all right, Christian. It's a little weird. And keeps them alive until, of course, a shepherd comes by and hears babies crying. It's like, oh, thrown out babies. But he also knew something. He knew that Numitor, he knew the whole story. Numitor was a rotter. He was throwing out his grandchildren. He knew these baby boys are about the same age that they should be, and he ordered them to be thrown out. He's like, I'm 99.8% sure these two kids are the grandchildren of the true king. I'm raising them. But I'm not going to tell them who they are, right? Not yet, not till the appropriate time. I'm just going to raise them. And so we have another Etruscan statue. This is a very famous one. Now, for years, I looked at this statue. Apparently this is, I wrote upside down. It doesn't say where it is. Capitoline wolf, Etruscan, 500 to 480 BC. Hollow cast bronze. Okay. This is a very famous statue. And it was only about 5 years ago that I was reading in an art book. The babies aren't original. They were added in the Renaissance. The Etruscan statue is just the wolf. The Etruscans knew this story, the Capitoline wolf. And then in the Renaissance, apparently somebody said, oh, wouldn't it be cute if we put 2 kids under there? No, it would not be cute. Leave it alone. But now this is how it's always shown, because the 2 kids were added hundreds of years later. Anyway, but do you notice how the wolf has a sort of the same, has the chimera vibe? I mean, it's not a chimera, but do you know what I mean? It's got the same sort of style and the cast bronze. It's Etruscan. It's not Greek. So Romulus and Remus grow up, and anyway, you read the story in Dorothy Mills. Eventually, they discover who they are. They are told who they are. And they help put Grandpa back on the throne. And they get rid of their great uncle. I don't remember. I don't know if he dies. I don't know. Oh no, a plot was formed. Amulius was slain, and Numitor replaced him on the throne. They actually, the more involved story says that Romulus and Remus had a little gang of shepherd friends, and they would run around and they would attack robbers. Like so if there were mountain robbers or something, they'd go and they'd attack them and get people's stuff back for them. So they were the good guys, right? But the robbers didn't like this, obviously, because they wanted to keep the robbed stuff. So they went to Amulius and said, hey, there's these dudes up in the mountain and they're taking all your stuff. And they just conveniently forgot to mention the fact that we're robbers and we take other people's stuff and they're taking our stuff. He's taking your stuff and you need to go, take care of this. So they went and they captured Remus and they took him back to Amulius. And Amulius, he comes in, and of course, you might be familiar with the fact that often people have a family resemblance, right? So Remus comes in, and Amulius is like, this kid looks like his mother. This kid looks like my brother. I think I may know who you are. But he doesn't say. And he questions him about, where you grew up and everything. So he's now 99.8% sure that this kid is his grandson. In the meantime, Romulus, who didn't get caught, is raising an army. He goes to his grandpa, Numitor. He's like, we need to take over. And there's a big battle. And Remus gets some allies inside the castle, inside the palace, and he rushes out at the same time that Romulus is attacking, and there's a big battle. And everybody is happy. Grandpa is back on the throne. Their mom is still living, He didn't kill her. So everybody is happily ever after, except not. Because Romulus and Remus decide that Alba, the town where Grandpa is king, they don't want to boot Grandpa off the throne again and cramp his style, but they want their own city, right? They want to found something of their own. They want to rule their own people. So we're going to build a new city, and we'll invite some immigrants from Alba, and we'll start a new city. Great. So they start, and they're like, well, there's 2 of us. Who gets to name the city? Who gets to build and name the city? Like me, no, me, no, me, no, me. That would never happen among you and your siblings, I am sure. But it happened to Romulus and Remus. And so this is where the augury and bird flights come in. So Romulus and Remus, like, okay, I'm going to stand on this hill and you stand on that hill. By the way, they decided they wanted to build their city in the place where the wolf found them and the shepherd found them, in that general vicinity. And it just so happened that in that general vicinity, there were 7 hills. Okay? So you go up that hill, you go up that hill, and then we're going to watch for birds. And the birds are going to give us a message about who gets to be in charge here. Okay? So Remus is there, he's like looking, six birds flying on the right. There they are, and he saw them first. But Romulus is over on this other hill. He's like, 12 birds. 12 birds. And Remus says, I saw mine first. And Romulus says, but I saw more. You see, it's an argument again. They're like, okay, well, you just build yours and I'll build mine. Great. So Romulus is building, he's building his walls. And his walls aren't very tall. I don't know how many helpers he has, I don't know how long it takes one person to, build a city and walls. His walls are not very tall, right? And Remus comes over, he's like, your city's a joke. Your city's a joke, and anybody could just jump over your wall and he just jumps over the wall, and Romulus kills him. Therefore, the new city is now Rome and not Rheims, after Remus, right? It's Rome for Romulus. Now, this is kind of important, because the very first thing that happens in the founding of Rome is a guy kills his brother. And I think this is the last question I asked you, isn't it? After reading the story of Romulus and Remus, what kind of people would you expect the Romans to become? Oh, my goodness. Pretty tough and not so nice.
Not too merciful.
Not too merciful. So this is one of the most famous stories in history, the story of Romulus and Remus. And the place where they decided to build is here. Notice that there is a river. See this Tiber River? It comes down out of the mountains, and it goes to the sea. Now, Rome isn't right on the ocean. Let me ask you a question. What's good about having a city right on the ocean?
Seaports.
Seaport, okay, easy. Shipping is easy, right? Importing, exporting, travel, super easy. What's bad about having a city on the sea?
Ships can come to attack you.
Yeah, you're sitting ducks, right? Other enemies can come and attack you. So, if you want to be able to get to the sea easily, but you don't want to be sitting ducks on the sea, not on the sea, but next to the sea, then you go upriver, which is indeed what they did. The Tiber, and supposedly it's where they were dumped, and the wolf found them. But it turns out it's a really, really good spot for a city. If it's almost like maybe they didn't get dumped and a wolf didn't feed them and somebody just decided to build a city there, which is probably what happened. Now, I told you this place has 7 hills, which we're going to talk about again in a minute. But every year, I forget to do this. Every year I botch it. But in the back of your reading guide, you have timelines that we always start out the year like putting things on, and then I just poop out on the timelines. But could everybody turn to the timeline? And though I would like you to go to the one on page 72. No. 71. And you should have something on there. Okay, you have First Olympics, 776. Do you have anything else on that page? No. Okay, that's fine. Because we're going to actually add something to it. This is the moment we've been waiting for when we added that. You have a timeline and 1,000 is up here, and 500 is down here, and somewhere sort of in the upper half you have 776 First Olympics, correct? I want you to put 753, and first of all we need to know, where will we put 753?
A little bit below 7.
A little bit below 776, but not very far below. Founding of Rome. 753 BC is the traditional date of the founding of Rome. It is a good date to learn. I don't ask you to memorize a bunch of dates, but sometimes it's good to learn some dates. They're like pegs you can hang things on, you know, like ideas. If you read about something that's happening, it's like, well, when is that? Oh, it's before that, after this. But notice something. It's almost at the same time, right? 776 and 753 are really, really close to each other, right? And so at the time when the Olympic Games are starting in Greece, this is the founding of Rome. Does that make sense? So you can almost, and the first Olympic Games is one of the earliest dates we know of in Greek history, right? And this is pretty much the earliest date that we know of. Nobody knows if that's the right date, right? But do you remember, I told you something about 776 BC, the first Olympics. What was special about that year to the Greeks, other than the fact that it's the first Olympics? Do you remember? It's okay. It was their year one. They counted time from that year. Guess what? The Romans count time from 753. That's their year one. Greece and Rome almost share the same year one, which is just really, really wild to me. It's very close in time that the two major peoples of the ancient world, you know, peg as their year one, without really any conferring with each other, as far as we know. Okay, now we're probably done with our, well, maybe we will try to visit the timeline again, but I always botch that. Okay, so the 7 hills. Rome is known, have any of you been to Rome? I've had some students that have gone to Rome, and I ask them always, well, do you see the hills? What's the deal with the hills? They're like, oh, I don't really notice hills. So,
Maybe it's just on rises.
see, I don't think they're particularly big hills. I really hope, Mrs. Ferguson wants to go to Rome, right? I'm hoping that someday before I'm old and decrepit and have to walk around with a walker or a cane or whatever, that I get to go to Rome. And Italy, other places too. If I go, I'm going to check out, though, the hill situation, because I really want to know. I want to find the hill and go up the hill and like, this is not particularly a hill. Yes, I'll go look for the bird flights. Another problem with ancient cities, and maybe you know this, is that, well, people dump their trash, right? People dump their trash and water washes dirt in. So you've got this city, and it's got nice houses, much nicer than that. See the little window they have? But it's got a doorknob, but no door. Oh, why is the doorknob up at the top? Okay, there we go. Anyway, and so over time, the ground level rises. So, I mean, it takes a long time, you know, and then dirt washes in, and this is dirt. And then, you know, people throw out their pop cans. That's a little pop top. Looks like a straw, doesn't it? And they're, you know, I don't know, like this is your Big Mac wrapper or whatever. And they throw, and eventually the ground level is above house level. And thing, you know, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later, and then the archaeologists come with their, you know, shovels, and they dig it up, and like, oh, there was a house here, and that used to be the street, but now the street is up here. And so I wonder if 2,700 years of occupation in Rome has filled in the valleys, does that make sense? And changed the level, but not uniformly. It's not like the hills got bigger at the same time that the lower parts get bigger. It kind of filled in. Maybe it used to be hillier than it is now. I don't know. But, yes, go ahead.
The Romans did some pretty interesting stuff. They could have just filled it in.
Yes, but they didn't, because they talk about the 7 hills. And like the hills were known, like the Palatine was where the capital, where the rich people lived, and the Capitoline was where the Capitol building was, and that sort of thing. So we said that it's good to live near the ocean because it's convenient for shipping and whatnot, but not right next to the ocean, because then people will attack you. So we go up the river. Rivers are convenient. What's convenient about hills? This is also an easy question.
Run down on people.
Yeah. It's very defensible, right? So picture the Acropolis in Athens. Very steep, flat hill. Where are we going to put our fortress? On that. And a lot of Greek cities had some sort of rocky outcropping like that. Corinth had one, and they just built their strongest places on top of that. So the Romans were like, dude, it's got a river, it's got ocean near, it's got defensible hills. This is awesome. They didn't have all 7 hills in Rome right away, because it started out being very small. And as a matter of fact, when you read your very long Dorothy Mills reading, you're going to read a little bit about what happened in the early time. Okay, I'm going to do this first, and then I've got poems, because no worries, we're out of Greece and into Rome, but I've got the Rome poem book. So don't want you to be disappointed or anything. You do not have to write this down, okay? This is an overview. Sometimes when you're reading about all these people and places, it's kind of easy to get lost. Like, where are we and what's going on and who, And so, like when we talked about Greece, we talked about the fact that there was early Greece and Lycurgus was giving those laws in Athens, and Draco was giving laws where everybody, Lycurgus was giving laws in Sparta, and Draco was giving laws in Athens where everybody was executed. Then we had Persia attack. Then we had a time period where Athens was super rich and bossing people around and taking the money. And then we had the time when they were fighting. And then we had the time where things just sort of collapsed until Alexander the Great. So that was our outline. Here's an outline of Rome. You don't have to write this down, okay? Unless you just are interested. From 753 to 509, they had kings. They had 7 kings. Interestingly, 7 kings, 7 hills.
7's a lucky number.
Lots of 7s. And the first of these is Romulus. You are going to read this week about this period. This is what we're going to focus on this week. It's just, and since there's 7 of them, I mean, it's just a lot of kings. Here's what, actually, let me see what questions I asked you. Okay, yeah. Each king sort of did something or added something to Rome. Not necessarily added stuff to Rome, but added an idea, okay? Then, from 509 to, I don't know, like 24 BC. This is BC. Rome was a republic. We will find out, I believe, at the end of this week's reading, why they decided they didn't want kings anymore. Something shocking happened. Something terrible and shocking. And they said, those kings are bad news and we're getting rid of all of them. We don't do kings anymore. And so, how many years is this roughly? You don't have to do the math exactly, but it's about,
years.
what?
It's like 480.
Yeah, it's about 500 years, right? It's a little less than 500 years, but it's very close, right? Like 480, 476, and yeah. So that's a really long time, isn't it? How long has America been a republic?
I guess
roughly,
As long as the state has been existing.
which is only about 250 years. About 250. They were a republic almost 500 years. Twice as long as America has been in existence. And that's only part of Rome's history. Because we had, 250 years almost of kings. Then they were a republic. Then, from about 24 BC to the traditional date of 476 AD, it was an empire. They had an emperor. And that's the time period that we usually think of. Like the Roman emperors, and they're taking over the world, and they have the army and everything. That's what we usually think about. But next week you're going to read about this time. Rome was still pretty small. It didn't own. Here we have this wonderful Roman Empire map, and the Roman Empire is everything that's mustard yellow.
It's still big.
Yeah, but that's this time. And it's this time slowly. But it's not this time. Rome is, at that point, just a city. And not the biggest city in the neighborhood. And they have a problem. The other neighbors don't like them. The neighbors don't like them for a particular reason that you will read about this week. And so they, here we go. So here's a close-up. Does everybody see Rome? Here's Veii, where that Apollo statue was from. Apollo/Apollo. And so Falerii and Volsinii and Clusium and all these places are not very far away. And they all didn't like these people moving in. We don't like you. And we are going to smack you around every chance we get. And the king said, I think so. And as we pointed out, a city that starts out with one brother killing the other brother, they're not pushovers. No, they're not pushovers. They're like, no, don't mess with us. Don't mess with us. And so, but this is kind of an outline. This is where we're going this semester, okay? So we're going to spend a very short amount of time, like 1 week, talking about the kings. By the way, can somebody tell me we know what it means to have a king. What does it mean to be a republic? Did we talk about this when we talked about Athens being a democracy? Have we talked about this? What? America's a republic. Why? But we're not a democracy. What's the difference? I'm so glad I
Because I'm Republican, but I hate politics.
I know, I'm not fond of politics either.
Yay, we're friends.
I don't love it. I'm so glad. Okay, first of all, it has nothing to do with Republican Democrat parties.
I figured.
But, so you have to kind of lay that aside. In a democracy, every single person gets a vote on every single thing you do. So, in Athens was a democracy for a good long time, which meant every single, well, it wasn't the women, and it wasn't the slaves, and it wasn't the children, but every single adult man, if Athens wanted to do something, every single adult man in Athens gathered together, and they voted. Should we go to war? Should we punish this person? What should we do? Now, every time something happens in our country, does every single person go out and vote on it? No. Like if Congress wants to pass a budget, do we all go vote on the budget? No. They just do it, right? If somebody's going to be appointed to the Supreme Court, do we all go vote on it? No. They're just confirmed by the Senate, right? That's a republic. In a republic, we vote for people, and we say, go do that for us. And if we don't like the way you do it, we will not vote for you again next time, right? But did you guys see the difference? But in a democracy, every single thing that happens, everybody votes on. So, what would America be like if everybody in America voted on every single thing? Oh, it would be exhausting. There's a lot of people. We're a huge country. If every time they wanted to pass a law about the speed limit or whatever, like everybody has to go vote, okay, we'd be exhausted. We'd be voting every day, all the time. We'd be standing in lines. They'd be constantly counting votes. We're too many of us. We can't do that. In Athens, there were roughly 6,000 men. 6,000 people can vote, and they can count. Often they just dropped colored pebbles in jar, or they had like a yes jar and a no jar or something like that, and then you just dump them out and count them. It's easy. We can't do that. We can't be a democracy. We're too big. Just a second. Brenda was going to say something.
We don't have slaves either to do all the work. The slaves would be doing all the work while the
This is right. In Athens, they had time to attend to politics constantly because they didn't have to, do all their work themselves. So that's the difference. In Greece, in Athens, they said everybody's going to vote. Here's something crazy. I don't think we talked about this in Athens. Do you know how they chose? Often they chose people to be like, they took turns being on a ruling council, right? Like it's somebody's turn to be on the council of X number of people that gets this job done. They didn't vote for them. They chose them by lot, like a lottery. It's like they just pick someone's name out of a hat. It's like, congratulations, you're the next leader. For the next month, you're the leader of Athens. Like, it didn't matter. Are they stupid? Are they smart? Are they capable? Are they failing? Doesn't we just can you imagine if we chose our leaders that way? It's like everybody, like we have all their names on a dartboard, and we just okay, hey, he's the next president.
I mean, we kind of do.
No, Jeremy's the next person. Jeremy.
Who's Jeremy?
He's my best friend.
Oh,
for me it's
Sweet.
awesome.
it's not here.
Anyway, that's what they did. That's what they did in Athens. Rome, when Rome got rid of their kings, Rome said, no. First of all, there's a lot of us. Second of all, we don't that's crazy. That's crazy because you might know that when large groups of people get together, sometimes they make stupid decisions. Sometimes it's good to have just like a group of people that we choose because we think they're particularly, wise or whatever. And you guys think about it and let us know what you want to do. So they did this for 500 years. And then later in the semester, we will talk about how they stopped doing this and ended up having an emperor who was kind of back to this, only even more so, right? Had more power. That is the outline of this year. We have poems. I think we might, I should have brought the funny sentences because I think we're going to get done early. I'm sure I can think of something to say, but. Okay. We have the 7 hills of Rome. Rome was built on 7 hills. Each hill had a name. See if you can learn them. Pretend that it's a game. The Viminal, the Aventine, the Quirinal, the Esquiline. To these, please add the Palatine, the Celian, the Capitoline. Rome was built on 7 hills, and there begins the story of the famous Roman Empire and its eternal glory. Yay. Okay. Romulus and Remus.
Oh, no.
Remus and Romulus, where have you been? Out in the forest. A wolf took us in. She fed us and nursed us just like her own, then gave us to shepherds until we were grown. Remus and Romulus, what will you be? The founders of Rome, 753 BC. 753 BC. All right. Okay, let's see if there's another poem. All right, it's the only one. Oh, we should so talk about this with our time left over. See, I knew there was something we could talk about for a few minutes. So, what do we know about Roman numerals?
They're extremely tricky.
They're extremely tricky. This is the right answer. They're boring.
What?
Letters are
What?
numbers.
How are they boring? How boring? Frustrating,
Okay,
irritating,
okay.
perhaps boring.
They're not.
How boring?
You are boring.
Oh, no. That is mean. Yes.
Letters are apparently numbers.
Letters are apparently numbers. Do you know that the Greeks used letters for numbers?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know.
Do you know? Does anybody know where we get the numbers that we use for numbers?
Greeks.
I just said they use letters for numbers.
Arabic.
The Arabs,
Arabs.
the Middle Eastern Arabs. When Muhammad came and started Islam, and I'm not trying to be mean, it's just a historical fact, and they started taking over the world, because that's what happened historically.
Because that's history.
They spread this idea of having these symbols that were numbers. And they had a special idea that came in very handy. Maybe you've never really thought about this, but let's take a look. So does everybody know how Roman numerals work, roughly? Okay? So this is just the crash course. So this means 1, right? This means 5. This means 10. This is 50. This is 100. This is 1,000. Okay. And then when we write them, you just put them in order. So this is 7.
XM.
Yeah, this is 20. This is 60. But if you want to do 8 or 9 or 4, you take 1 away, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If a smaller comes in front of a larger, it means take it away. Anytime a smaller comes in front of a larger, take it away. Then we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Take 1 away from 10. All right. So if I were going to do a math problem, all right, let's okay, I'm going to do 27 plus
Where's my pencil?
1.
Where's my
122.
Wait.
You don't have to do it. I want you to see if you can see a problem immediately.
49. There's 49.
Well, I don't know if it's 222 plus something, or if it's 122.
The 10 is
149.
Okay, so if we wanted to do this, if this were really a math class, here's what we would do, right? I would say 27 and I would write it like that, right? Then I would write 122. Where would I put the 1? Would I write it like this? Okay, how would I write it?
You put 27 along 122 on the top.
Okay, well, I wouldn't have to put it on the top, but if I want to write it on the bottom, where would I put it?
The 1 is to the left of the 2.
Ah, and then like this.
Yeah.
Now, why do I do that?
So it's not confusing.
Because it's a bigger number.
Why do I do that? Why does this get lined up in the same column as this?
1 is the 1 is in
Place value. If something is in the last place, it's ones. If something is in the next place, it's tens. If something is in the next place, it's hundreds. Look at this. Holy cow. It's everywhere. It's like, okay, these are both ones. This is a 5 ones. And it doesn't match. Nothing matches up. You can't add the way we add. You can't do it with these. It is marvelous that they were such good engineers and builders because their mathematics was very complicated because they didn't have this. And here's the magic thing that the Romans didn't have and the Arabs had. What if we wanted to do 27 plus 109, okay? 27, and you said the hundreds go here. Here's the 9. What goes here? my goodness. We have a mark that means there aren't any.
The Romans did.
They didn't have that. The Greeks didn't have a way to say none of them. It was just numbers. And so without that 0, we couldn't do place value. We couldn't add and subtract and multiply and divide. All the things that we do, all the things you've learned to do in math, it would be crazy difficult. And so we think of 0 as being not, 0 is 0. Like, 0 is earth-shattering. When the Europeans got the concept of 0, and it revolutionized mathematics, because that's what we were dealing with before. Anyway, what were you going to say, Emma?
I finished the problem.
Oh, what is it?
136.
Thank you. All right, so I have a poem about Roman numerals, and then I will let you go.
Oh, yes.
Some letters led a double life. They served as numbers, too. They used a simple system. The numerals were few. For 1, you used the letter I. For 5, the letter V. L was 50. Oh, L was 50. D was 500, I'm sorry. L was 50, X was 10, 100 was a C. The system had its problems, though, when numbers got too high, and Romans weren't able to divide or multiply. Their numerals were useful, but it's very clear to me that we are served much better by our numbers 1, 2, 3. Yeah, sorry. D is 500, L is 50. Forgive me. All right. Read some more for me this week, but you don't have to write anything. We'll start a new paper next week, but it'll be something easy. And start the Aeneid.
If it's easy, why don't we do it now?